Today we're going to look at selections in Altair. We're using the iris dataset, which you're familiar with. Probably seen it in your dreams now. I am. I'm not ashamed of it. Anyway, if you're going to make a selection, you need three things. Number one, you need a selector object. Number two, you need a condition. So something has to change when you make the selection. And the third thing you need is a chart, obviously. So selector is our first variable, and this is an alt selection interval. Selection interval is like a brush in other interactive charting packages. Our condition is an alt condition. It takes three parameters. The first one is the selector object that we just created. The second one is species, which is what we're using to decide on the changes, and then the value, the alternative value to what the species are normally colored as, will be light grey. So we're going to create a chart now. You know, actually, we're going to have tooltips in the chart, so it'll save us a little bit of typing. And so much of programming is about saving yourself from typing. So we're going to create a tooltip list by calling toList and df columns. That'll be useful. And we won't be repeating ourselves as well, so it's a double result. So alt chart df mark circle. Our first x parameter is petal width, then it's petal length. And then we add our the color is set to condition. Color is what's going to change when we select different species on the chart. We call add selection to add the tooltip. We call add selection to the chart and hit shift and enter to run it. Oh hell. Scroll down to see what the matter is. Amateur hour. I keep doing that, and I thought I'd trade myself out of it. Instead of I forgot to put in code. I'll be wiser again. Anyway, so this is a brush. We highlight, we drag across the chart, we highlight what we want to see. Now, this seems like very small magic indeed with an interactive chart, but where this becomes useful is in a situation with subcharts. So I'm just going to turn off this left-hand menu to give us a bit more space. And we're going to create two charts here. So this first chart is going to stay. We're going to call it petal. And then we're going to create another scatter plot that we'll call sepal or sepal. I'm never sure how to pronounce that word. I don't think there's a consensus, actually. But here you'll see one of the most interesting things, one of the most useful things about the selection interval process. And that is that when you have a dual chart, two subplots as we're going to have here, a selection in one is repeated in the other. So we're going to create a petal pipe sepal, and then we'll call add selection on the pair of them. And what we see when we scroll down is that when we select a group on the sepal chart, the same data is selected on the petal chart. So you see here the straight lines, the vertical lines in the species aren't vertical lines in the sepal. There's no connection between petal length and sepal length or anything like that. But it's an interesting way of selecting data that is not itself in a group in the other visualization of the chart, so that while there's a natural grouping in the petal chart, there's a less natural grouping in the sepal chart. Okay, we're going to look at the most obvious sort of selection now. The last one was called a brush. This is called a selection single. So all you do here is you tap on your datum, click on your datum, and it's selected in both charts. Right, very straightforward. Everything else turns off, and there's just that datum selected on both charts. Doesn't matter which chart you select, it'll be selected on the other as well. And again, it's kind of interesting just to see how they're differently positioned according to how you make the chart. So you're looking at different views of the same set of data, a petal scatter chart and a sepal scatter chart. Same data, different views. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a multiple selection object. Again, as we did the last time, hit C, hit V to copy the cell down to the next one. We're going to change this selection multi, and we're going to add two parameters that weren't in the last one. There's an on parameter that we're going to set to mouse over, so we don't have to go clicking, and there's a toggle parameter which we're going to set to false. And what that means is that if something is selected, it stays selected, meaning that by mousing over the chart, you can color it in. And again, what you color in on the petal chart is colored in the sepal chart, and vice versa. Again, it could be useful depending on the data. It's a quick way of accessing different data. And then the second last thing we're going to do is we're going to change the parameter in our multi-selector to fields. So this way we set fields to species. So you select a species, that's what's selected. All members of that species are selected in both charts, deselected, whatever. And this species selection is something that we can use in the last selection chart we're going to use, which is something that's again used in other packages, where you can select categories according to the legend. And that's what we're going to look at now. So you click outside a cell, hit C, hit V, copy and paste the cell. We're going to rename our petal chart, and we're going to create another chart called legend. And this is a scatter chart again, but it's a scatter chart with only one parameter in code. Mark circle, close that, hit encode. That's what I didn't do the last time. And this takes one parameter, which is Y parameter. It takes an alt-Y method. The alt-Y method takes species as its as what's going to be logged, and it also takes an axis parameter, which takes an orient parameter. That is to say, where will we put the legend? We're going to put it on the right. And then the color is set to the condition that we had up to it. So that's, otherwise things are the same. And we type chart pipe legend, close them in parentheses. Okay, we're a parentheses short, I think, in probably alt axis, is it? It is. They're adding up now. Hit shift and enter, hope for the best. Okay, the legend is duplicated here, so we're going to have to remove the legend in our condition. So we go to condition, and species, we change species to alt color and set the legend to false. And then hit shift and enter to run the cell. Okay, another error. Scroll down. The errors in Altair are very long, but they're often straightforward. And the problem here is it doesn't recognize false. So instead of false, that should be none. N-O-N-A. Capital N-O-N-A. And there is our chart. We can click on and off with the legends. We can click the data, and the legend goes on and off as well. Marvelous. Selections in Altair. Please click like, notify, and subscribe. Subscribe if you want the tutorials to continue. Live long and prosper.